Let's take a live look at the U.S. Capitol now as the investigation into the attempt on former President Donald Trump's life ramps up. The director of the Secret Service has resigned.
Her exit comes just one day after she was hammered by lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Rebecca Castor has the latest from Washington.
Ma'am, you have not done your job. You have put two black eyes on your agency, and you need to go.
After a brutal hearing on Capitol Hill Monday, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle quits her job. It comes after she dodged basic questions about how a gunman was able to get close enough to shoot at the former president.
When you're in these jobs and something catastrophic happens on your watch, a former president almost being murdered live on television for the world to see, I'm glad she decided to do the honorable thing and resign.
It's a rare moment in Washington where Democrats and Republicans came together to say the Secret Service failed in their mission, and someone should be held accountable. In what appears to be a goodbye email to her colleagues obtained by Fox News, Cheatle writes, "All of you are worthy of trust and confidence. You deserve the nation's support in carrying out our critical mission."
Now we have to pick up the pieces. We have to rebuild the American people's faith and trust in the Secret Service as an agency.
Former President Trump recently met with Cheatle at the RNC. Reacting to her resignation, he tells Fox News Digital, "She never gave me proper protection, so I ended up having to take a bullet for democracy." Many requests were made by on-site Secret Service for more people, always with a turn down or no response. House Speaker Johnson and Democratic leader Jeffries have now launched a bipartisan task force to investigate the assassination attempt. That's in addition to separate investigations by the FBI and Department of Homeland Security. In Washington, Rebecca Castor, Fox 32 Chicago.
All right, let's talk in greater detail about the shakeup at the top.
With us to break it all down is Professor William Muck of North Central College. Professor, thanks for joining us this afternoon, as always.
Good to be here.
Okay, so let's talk about VP Harris. She had her first rally today. She worked to create a sharp contrast from former President Trump. How should she be handling the next few months leading up to this election that will not only separate her from former President Trump, but also from President Biden?
Well, I think she's off to a pretty good start. If we think about where the Democratic Party was maybe 3 or 4 days ago and the dire position, she's really transformed it and flipped this election. And what we saw out of her today and yesterday was conversation about moving forward. It's clear that her campaign is going to frame it as we're the party that's going to move you forward, whereas Donald Trump is going to take you back. And I think that's a really, really interesting strategy, especially at this particular moment. This is shaping up to be a change election. The American public has suggested that they want change, they want to move in a new direction, and so she's setting herself up to be that change candidate. Now, we'll see how she executes over the long haul, but I think it's off to a really interesting start to say she's somebody who's different from the two other candidates.
President Biden is going to be giving a speech tomorrow about his decision to drop out of the race. What do you think he's going to say?
Well, some of it will be self-reflection, talking about his administration, but I think most of it, the most important part will be this transition to Kamala Harris and you know, this sort of heroic role that he embraced in beginning that transition. And then also, I think he's going to play more of a father figure role. We saw a little bit of that yesterday when he called into her remarks and was sort of suggesting that, you know, go kid, you're going to be great. I think we'll see him play that role, encourage her. And I think the perception of Joe Biden is likely going to change when he's no longer a presidential candidate, but now an outgoing president. And it's likely that people rally around Joe Biden in a way that they didn't when he was president.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting during the DNC if and when he does, in fact, make an appearance. I can only imagine what that's going to be like for the crowd, who is thankful to him for what he's done for this country over the last 4 years. But let's get back to Kamala. I'm curious. You know, obviously there's a new resurgence and excitement in the Democratic Party, but her role as VP, how many swing votes does that change over to the Democrats? How many people who maybe were thinking about not voting and now see her as the possible nominee? How different is that going to be for them?
Well, I think what the Biden campaign was struggling with were individuals, it was motivation, right? So young voters, voters of color, those were the individuals where there wasn't a lot of energy, and I think turnout was going to be low. The prospect of a Kamala Harris candidacy is that she can excite those groups again. And I think we're seeing some of that, right? We're seeing women are excited, young people, college students getting excited about this, voters of color, right? So those are the groups that are really going to drive the Democratic success. It's not about winning over independents necessarily or people who haven't made a decision. It really is about mobilizing your base and getting those voters out. And I think Democrats have made a decision that she can do that better than another candidate. And again, the early returns are that she's driving a lot of energy and lots of money into the campaign.
Yeah, driving a lot of energy, new energy with Gen Z as well. Professor William Muck, always good to see you. Always good to hear your insight as well.
Thanks for having me.